I'm Rob Downey, a family practice MD and Institute for Functional Medicine certified practitioner. I'm coming to you from Seaworthy Functional Medicine in Homer, Alaska. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. Today, we are so fortunate to be joined by a many years expert in essential oils and a leader in the field, Jodi Cohen from Vibrant Blue Essential Oils. Thanks for joining us today, Jodi.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me.
And you have your own podcast, I noticed. Is that accurate?
Do, yes. Yeah, Essential Alchemy. I really, it's funny, we have all these like biohacking conferences where you're getting help through technology. I think there's ancestral technology in nature, and I'm just trying to remind people of what they already know.
What a great place to start. Nature and alchemy both, I think, are such evocative words to describe things that you and I both care deeply about sharing in terms of what I think of as the good news for people about approaches that are intuitive, based in the blessings of the natural world, where people can lean in and experience great benefit. So you've been doing this for quite some time, haven't you?
Yeah, 11 years.
11 years. And a good place to start, I think, including our preparation for today's talk, would be how can people think about the word essential in essential oils? What's that telling us about this approach?
Yeah, it's basically the blood of the plants. Essential oils perform essential functions in the plant. It's kind of, we know that most pharmaceutical drugs are derived from plants, right? Valerian root became Valium. White willow bark is aspirin. I think it's more than 50% of the pharmaceutical drugs are basically trying to mimic the chemistry of plants. And when you think about plants, what is it in the plant that's actually providing the medicinal value? It's that essential oil. And that's why, for anyone who doesn't know what essential oils are, if you were to go into a lavender field and pick a bunch of lavender and then put it in, you distill it. So what that basically is a big metal container with boiling water. And you put the plant in the boiling water, and then the steam rises. And oil and water don't mix. They're different weights. And so basically the oil goes down one side and the water goes down the other. That's a hydrocell that also has medicinal powers, but essential oils are the concentrated essences of plants. They're really that essential healing property. And so by concentrating them, you can then deliver a concentrated amount into your body to help your body return to balance. The idea that I believe is that the body, likes homeostasis. It always returns to balance, and that's where healing occurs. It's not that you're healing anything. It's that you're just, like if a freeway is under construction, right? You're moving really slowly. There's nothing wrong with the car. It's just the environment that you just are, there are too many other cars around. And then suddenly the construction passes and you can go whatever speed you want. I think that our body sometimes, we're reacting to toxins, we're reacting to stress, we're reacting to so many things in our environment that we're not able to really shift into that rest, digest, repair mode where we can heal.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. As I heard you describe that, I thought about some prep I did for today's session, which included our audience, who I thank for joining us. I'm always thinking of ways to ground the concepts or to make them granular,
right, or
easily appreciable. And so when I think about how I feel after long stretches of work and then visiting family in Montana from Alaska, and in the summer, the ponderosa forests in Montana and the humus, the decaying material and pine needles down on the forest floor, take on this mind-blowing, intoxicating quality.
Yeah.
And I'm immediately restored and at peace when I smell that toasty, sunny, warm ponderosa thing. And the magnitude of the impact is beyond, it's striking.
Yeah, yeah. It's called forest bathing. There's actually research on that. Like the Japanese are really interested in that. And there are different hypotheses about what's going on with that. Like there's a really good book, something about Secret Language of Trees and how trees communicate with each other and they use smell. Like if they sense a predator coming, the tree at one end of the forest will signal through smell to the other trees. But I think that I think it goes back to what we were talking about, this idea of returning to balance, like returning to factory settings. We are designed to interact with nature. It's, we're all light beings, right? So the sunshine that either hits us when we're outside or that hits, the plant and causes photosynthesis in the plant, like it really just allows us to kind of be in our natural environment, a natural state. And it's really hard when you're surrounded by that beauty and, smell is actually the first line of defense. It helps us with safety. We can't go very long without food and water. So we smell food, we smell water, we smell predator odor, we smell fire. Smell is what allows us to stay safe. And when we're smelling the safety of the forest, of course, it sends that signal like you're safe. And when you're safe, you can allocate resources to restoration and repair. It's only when there's the threat of danger that you need to allocate resources towards survival. And you can't do both at the same time.
I want to stop and underscore something you said. This is the essential oils, which we'll talk about more specifically shortly, including their utility to mental health. When we're sending signals of safety, we're winning. And I think the backdrop here is that there's this immersive problem for the majority of people that you and I are seeking to help, which is that they sense that something's wrong, but it's difficult for them to appreciate looking around them what it is, because there's a broad societal and cultural stress, distress, fight, flight, freeze, faint, sort of overwhelm phenomenon happening.
Yeah.
And when a person hears their mother's voice or their brother on the phone, or they get a hug from their friend, or they smell the forest or what have you, that feeling the person gets in that moment, I'm safe, somebody's got my back, I'm at ease. I think that's what we're after here, in that it's addressing one of the most dominant imbalances in society that's perhaps the most difficult to appreciate because it's so pervasive.
It's so pervasive, and when you start talking to practitioners, like the missing link of healing is stress, but it's not just the stress of the lion is chasing me. It's our body can't differentiate between thought-driven anticipatory stress or like recall stress, PTSD, and actual physical stress in that moment. And so we can turn on the news and see there was, a shooting. I saw this the other day, a shooting in downtown Seattle in midday. And I'm like, oh dear, does that mean I could get shot? My kid could get shot? Your mind starts to project and your body starts to react. What the stress response in your body is your autonomic nervous system, which controls your automatic functions, all the things that you do naturally without thinking, like breathing, your heart beating, digesting your food, detoxifying any toxins in the body. What happens when there's a danger present is that resources need to be allocated towards survival, right? You need to have more energy to either fight or flee. So your heart beats a little bit faster, your respiration increases. That gives you more blood, more oxygen. Your blood flow is actually routed to your arms and your legs, so you can either fight back or flee, and away from your core, away from all the things that digest your nutrients or detoxify, or turn on immunity or turn off inflammation. It's basically like you're shut down. For those of us that have had those stressful periods in our life, if it's not on fire, I can't pay attention to it. You're not necessarily getting your annual checkup during that time, or even maybe paying the bills, because you have to allocate all your resources to that current present danger. And what people don't realize is that we, especially if we're addicted to our device and we're always seeing, the latest catastrophe or even, something good is happening to a friend and we're like, oh gosh, I wish I could do that. It's this constant machine that's being fed where we never get out of that, like danger response and into that safety repair response. And this is something that's really important for people that, have been doing everything right or are seeing some progress, but not as much as you want. It's a little bit like, if you're trying to bike uphill in the highest gear, it's going to be a lot harder than if you gear shift down and you're in the lowest gear, then it feels manageable. So how do you gear shift out of danger and into safety? There's actually a gear shift in your body that most people don't know about. It's your vagus nerve, cranial nerve number 10, longest nerve in the body, that is literally the information highway between the brain and the body. So it starts, quick anatomy lesson, back of the head, and it splits and winds on both sides behind the earlobe. If you're listening or watching, I want you to feel right now behind your earlobe, and you're going to feel a little bone. That is your mastoid bone. You're going to feel a little divot. Reflex points are always divots, so you can find them easier. That is where your vagus nerve is the most accessible to the surface. And we're going to loop back to this and talking about oil application, but it then winds through your throat, your heart, your lungs, every organ of digestion and detoxification. And early in my career, I was kind of a huge fan of Dr. Datis Karazian. He's this brilliant mind. He talks a lot about the brain. He talks about the thyroid. And he was on to vagus nerve stimulation, meaning activating the vagus nerve to stimulate the parasympathetic safety branch of the nervous system. But he would tell people, like gag yourself with a tongue depressor because, your vagus nerve is accessible there. Gargle until you want to cry, give yourself a coffee enema because the vagus nerve innervates the gallbladder and coffee enema stimulate that. And I'd always think like, this works, but I just can't gag myself. Like it's just too hard, and it's like those supplement graveyards. You can have all the right supplements in your house, but if you're not ingesting them, they're not really helping. You can know you're supposed to stimulate the vagus nerve, but if you don't know how or you don't do it, then it's really not helping. So when oils kind of entered my life, this was something I was really obsessed with, is how do I help people activate the parasympathetic nervous system? Because once that's turned on, it's like, that driving analogy, once you get out of the construction zone and you have 4 lanes of traffic to work with instead of 1, you can drive at a normal speed. Once you get out of that safety sense and you feel like all your resources need to go towards survival, you can start to heal. So, I'm a researcher by nature, and I crash test dummy myself all the time. So I started using kind of my gauge of my parasympathetic nervous system, my Aura ring, and testing different oils. And originally I thought, I want to calm my nervous system. I should use calming oils like lavender, chamomile. And it didn't really do much. And then I put on my research cap and found this article on vagus nerve stimulation. There was a New York neuroscientist named Kevin Tracy who was surgically implanting a pacemaker-like device on that point that we showed you earlier, kind of right behind the earlobe on that mastoid bone. And he was using it to electrically stimulate the nerve and getting great results. In fact, the FDA has approved this device for epilepsy, migraines, and depression. And once I heard stimulate, all of a sudden this light bulb went off. I was like, wait a minute. There are certain oils that are perceived as stimulatory, which means that they're hot. So like oregano, thyme, cinnamon, clove, peppermint, rosemary. These are things that, if you ingest them, they're not going to feel great. And they, could cause a lot of damage internally. If you put them on your arm, it might turn red. It might feel hot. Should that happen, you're not going to put water on it because oil and water don't mix. You're going to go into your kitchen and grab any oil you have in your kitchen. It could be olive oil, it could be coconut oil, and just put that on and that will dilute it. But once I kind of realized, let me see if I can use stimulatory oils. Like, let me play with that idea. So I started testing different stimulatory oils on that point. And I realized that when you get a combination of, the product that we recommend or that I use and created is called parasympathetic. It's a combination of clove and lime. And I'll explain a little bit about chemistry in a way that I hope isn't boring, but clove is super stimulatory. And it has a lot of really sought after chemical constituents like this constituent eugenol. But on its own, the molecules are mid-size, so if you were to put just clove on your earlobe, it would take 15 minutes to get into your system. Citrus oils, the oils that are found in the peel of citrus fruits, are very small molecules. This is why everyone says like, oh, bergamot, neroli, they're mood lifting. It's because they get in really quick because the molecules are small. So if you combine a stimulatory oil like clove with a citrus oil like lime that has really small molecules and put it there, all of a sudden you get the best of both oils. You get the super stimulatory clove and the super small molecules of lime, and it acts like an acupuncture needle. It suddenly stimulates the vagus nerve, shifts you into parasympathetic, tells your body you are safe, and also tells your mind you're safe. And the opposite of I'm not safe is I have choices. And when resources are allocated towards survival, if you were able to contemplate, the theory of the universe, you wouldn't run, you wouldn't fight back. You'd be like, oh, that's so interesting. So your ability to problem solve is kind of shut down when you're in survival. That's kind of your prefrontal cortex area. So suddenly when you're safe, it comes back online. And all those moments for anyone who gets anxious and has panic attacks and feels like you have no choice and, starts catastrophizing, the minute you activate your parasympathetic nervous system and you realize I have choices, all of a sudden you don't need to catastrophize, because catastrophizing, you can keep it. That can be one choice. Doing nothing can be another choice. Doing nothing today and something tomorrow. You can just start to kind of unpack, and then all of a sudden you're on a roll and you're like, well, wait a minute. Maybe I could call that friend of mine who's really good at this stuff. She actually might have an even better solution,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So something I'd like to add there, because that combination of lime and clove in the parasympathetic has a similar quality the first time you open the cap as that feeling of walking in the ponderosa forest in
Yes.
Montana in the summer. There's this intuitive wow experience. And do you encourage people, is body intelligence part of this? Can people get a sense for which things are a better fit for them by
Absolutely.
what their intuition is telling them?
Absolutely. I see some people say to me like, oh, I've heard that if you don't like the way it smells, that's what you need. And I'm like, my goodness, if you smelled something you were going to eat and you didn't like the way you smelled, would you actually eat it? Of course not. I think there is a lot to be said for intuitive eating, intuitive supplements, for the women listening, you might crave chocolate at that time of month because you need magnesium. You might crave a hamburger when you're pregnant or certain times of month because you need iron. Your body knows. And interestingly, even certain oils like frankincense is a great one. Sometimes it smells amazing to me and sometimes it's repugnant. And it's just kind of what I need at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's use the frankincense as a segue. I saw a neat article and reference on your website about frankincense and mental health. And I had planned to mention it anyway, because to my knowledge, I don't think I'd ever smelled it. I'd prescribed Boswellia, same name, two names for the same thing. I'd prescribed it as an oral anti-inflammatory for years. And the first time I smelled frankincense, I thought, I've been missing out for 55 years. This is one of the best smells I've ever smelled.
Yeah.
And I find it very calming.
Yeah.
And I saw a reference to frankincense's role in mental health. So let's talk a little bit about both essential oils and mental health broadly, but also frankincense specifically, if we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone who doesn't know, frankincense is the resin of the tree. So think of the tree gets, cut, and the resin, it's like a natural nature Band-Aid. And so it does the same thing in us. It's really good for calming inflammation, for helping with mental focus. It's commonly cited for cancer. I personally think cancer has a variety of root causes, and so I don't think there's one magic bullet for everything. But I do think that one of the things that's going on with mental health is inflammation, right? Inflammation in the brain specifically. And that could be a number of things. It could be a toxic load, that the toxins are then turning on the immune system. The immune system responds with inflammation. It could be some kind of injury that ignites it. But frankincense is kind of the we have blends that do a lot of things. We have an anti-inflammatory blend, but if you're looking for a single oil, frankincense is a great one because it kind of calms inflammation. And it's also really good for grounding you, right? Because it's a resin, so it comes from a tree. trees have deep roots in the earth. So it just makes you feel really, really calm and really supported, and it's also good for the skin because, it's that salve. So it has a lot of popular uses. I think that honestly, if you ask people what their favorite oil is, many people choose lavender, some people like peppermint, but frankincense definitely is in the top 5 that most people mention for a variety of reasons. And if you're new to it and you want to play with it, you can kind of put it on the back of the head. That's a really good point to put it on. You can smell it. You can also put it over your gallbladder. It can help with like liver and gallbladder detoxification, or if you don't like the smell, but you want to play with it anyway. The bottom of the feet are always a really great choice. There are a lot of reflex points there, so you can, put it in a specific spot.
Mhm. Beautiful. Let me just mention a couple things, see what you think. This is perhaps a little bit of a potpourri for our audience. So because so many folks are distressed, one way essential oils can be helpful is that the olfactory nerve has fewer firewalls between it and the brain. Is
Yes.
that, and including and then the smell sense itself goes straight to the amygdala, our emotion center. So the degree to which we're shut down and which are the easiest avenues to get that reset effect, of which we want many. Most
Yeah.
of us are so stressed out without knowing it. We want multiple modalities of safety. So we want to hang with safe people and get a lot of sleep and eat whole food and find joy and use essential oils. This is an issue of the dose, but the beauty of the essential oils via their route of administration when they come into the body through the olfactory nerve is it goes straight through the safety center and says,
Right.
hey, we're good.
Yeah, and you can drill down even further by picking one nostril over the other, but you're absolutely right. It goes straight, they call the nostrils kind of the elevator to the brain. And also that's a really good way. You kind of get smell satiety, just like you have like hunger satiety, like you're ravenous, you're so hungry, and then you start to eat, and like a couple minutes in, you're not ravenous anymore, right? You start to feel full. With smell, it's really interesting. You can hold a bottle under your nose. This is actually good for anyone who lost their smell during COVID, smell retraining. But you smell it immediately. And then if you were to kind of keep it here and keep smelling, at a certain point, you don't smell it as much anymore. Like you've gotten the satiety from the smell. And so you need very little to kind of have a big impact.
Beautiful. On the we talked getting ready for today's session about efficiency.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that that one's not necessarily intuitive what the most efficient routes of administration are.
Yeah. So I am, kind of like a mom, like let's get the best bang for the buck. So I actually think that smell is the most efficient way to consume essential oils for many reasons. It's not messy. It's really, inexpensive. It makes the bottle last an insanely long time. And on that point, smelling. So for anyone who's prone to anxiety attacks, panic attacks, our mutual friend Titus Chu, who's a functional neurologist, which is an area of chiropractic that kind of tries to stimulate the different areas of the brain to balance them. He taught me that panic attack is the right frontal lobe, the right forehead, kind of overfiring. And so he taught me that the way you balance the brain and return it to homeostasis so that you feel better is to stimulate the left frontal lobe. And the easiest way to do that is to literally take your right thumb, plug your right nostril, and smell anything through your left nostril. And what happens is the smell, left side of the body often impacts, or left side of the brain impacts right side of the body. But with the nostrils, the left nostril goes directly to the left forehead. So the smell goes to the left forehead, kind of turns on, wakes up the left forehead, stimulates that area. Now the two hemispheres are balanced and the anxiety dissipates.
That's a really nice takeaway for folks, both in terms of the principle and some immediate applicability.
Oh, I can tell you, I used to overshare, but I'd have panic attacks in supermarket checkout lines. It was the craziest thing. You'd go to the supermarket, get all your stuff, you'd be in line, and all of a sudden it would be taking too long and I'd feel really hot and my heart would start racing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there were times when I would literally have to like leave the cart and go outside and, breathe. And then I learned this technique. And so now I don't go to the supermarket without an oil. and I can do it. And it like immediately, it works every time.
Mm.
And it's additive and cumulative. I have much fewer anxiety attacks now than I used to.
In my practice as a family practice MD and functional medicine certified practitioner who's primarily practiced in Montana and Alaska. So I see a wide swath of people from all walks of life, and panic attacks, the formal diagnosis of anxiety, non-specific angst about state of personal affairs, health, the world, the degree to which we do or don't get along, et cetera. We're facing epidemic levels of this emotional experience. So I
Yeah.
think that what you and I are talking about today is super, the importance of what we're talking about today can't be overstated, which is
No, I-
multiple avenues to setting the signal of safety and getting back into homeostasis, which is our native birthright.
Yes. Well, and that's the other thing that I didn't mention about channels of application. People seem to think, they say like, oh, ingesting it because it gets right into the system, and they kind of diminish the idea of topical application. And they think of it like, you hurt your wrist, so you put some kind of cream on your wrist and it helps your wrist, but it's not necessarily helping your back, because they assume it has to go through the skin, get into the bloodstream, get carried to the heart, and then be pumped systemically. And that's not wrong. But what I realized is when you topically apply oils on reflex points, there are whole meridian lines in your body for Chinese medicine that affect different areas. And so you can use a very small amount of oil, like literally, here's the bottle, flip the bottle, that amount on your finger and put it on a reflex point, and it has kind of a systemic impact. And so the other thing that I do personally for anxiety, well, I do two things. I use the parasympathetic oil on that reflex point for the vagus nerve, because that sends a systemic, safety signal throughout the body. And then I have an adrenal blend. Sometimes when we feel like we're in danger a lot, our adrenals kick out a lot of cortisol. And cortisol rhythms, it's not a flat line, right? Sometimes it's designed to be high in the morning, so you have the energy to wake up and get out of bed, and then kind of be less so in the evening so that you can restfully fall asleep. And plants, herbs, adaptogenic herbs, what they mean is they meet you where you're at. So if you're too low, they lift you up. If you're too high, they bring you down. They're kind of like that perfect best friend, right? You have something you're really happy about, they're your biggest cheerleader. You have a bad day and they just validate, that's so sad. I'm so sorry that happened to you, So what I like about plants, in opposed to like other ways of kind of controlling cortisol, some things are designed to, pick it up. Some things are designed to pull it down. But since it's not flatline, it's nice to have something that meets you where you're at, so that no matter what's going on, it kind of brings you back into homeostasis. And I think oils work like adaptogenic herbs. So we have an adrenal blend that you put over the adrenals on the low back.
I'm glad you brought up the meridians. My mentor is both a Bastyr trained naturopathic doctor and a licensed Chinese medicine acupuncturist who I've had the blessing of working with for 17 years. And so a lot of the things that I learned in medical school, I had to reconfigure once the meridians of Chinese medicine were invoked. And I suppose this is a time I might make a little call for humility for all of us, myself included.
Yeah.
In that, I think that we miss out on some of the most important opportunities if we assume that Western understanding and conventional medicine has this all figured out. And so again, just speaking for myself, the idea that the heart's a pump and the nerves are wires. What functional medicine shows is the body functions more like an ecosystem than a robot.
Yeah.
And what Chinese medicine acupuncture shows is that there are these meridians or lines of energy in the body, for lack of a better term. There's these concentrated nodes or points which have clinical manifestations when they're activated. And this is very well established, both via the ancient tradition for thousands of years being beneficial, anecdotal data out of Asia, people even using acupuncture for general anesthetic for surgery. And then fast forward, when these points are leveraged for the application of things like essential oils, if folks are struggling to understand it, who are part of our audience today, I mean, lots of the functional medicine audience is hip to this. They intuitively get it. But for the ones that don't, you can't see it through the lens of conventional medicine and wires and pumps. It needs to be seen through the lens of acupuncture. I think. At least
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
the closest I've come to understanding it.
well, and it's interesting because I work with a range of ages, right, including young children. And one of my dear friends, her daughter always had anxiety, and so I gave her an oil, and she was like, "It's so weird. Ellie doesn't leave the house without that oil. Like it's always in her backpack." And I'm like, "Yeah, because it works. Like kids just know. So you don't." The thing that I love about oils is you don't necessarily even need to understand why it works. You just know that you feel better, kind of like you feel better when you walk in nature. And so you probably add that to your day. I feel better when I exercise. I feel better when I drink a lot of water. I feel better when I go to bed before 10 at night. Like we just, there's so many things that we're like, oh, when I do that, it works well. And so we just keep adding the good things.
Yeah, right on. Beautifully summarized. And given that there's so many dichotomies, so many dilemmas people face, this or that, with essential oils, it isn't this or that, it's this and that. David and Austin.
Well, and it works even if you don't know why it works.
Yeah, beautiful.
And if you want to know why it works, I have 2 books you can that will give you more detail.
Well, yeah, I think people have different styles. I think people have different styles, and that's part of healing and honoring too. The Perlmutters and Brainwash invoked some of the science of this, and many of us grasp it intuitively, and I think either way is okay. I should note also that a lot of the stress experts and healing experts that I talked to over the last 5 years, whether it's Heidi Hanna, who's a researcher into stress, or invoking that we need to heal from the ground up, or a bunch of the folks I've talked to more recently, including Dr. Chu, over and over and over again, they're saying we need to drop into the body to heal. And I think that this again can then help folks realize the use of the essential oils, the experience, getting into safety, getting into rest and digest, getting into rest and restore. This breaks the spell, it breaks the cycle, and starts a reiterative theme of healing. Yeah,
it's a reboot to factory settings.
Beautiful. Are there things you think are important for people to know that we didn't get to drill down into yet?
The only thing that I kind of want to share, I think it's really hard with what's going on the planet right now to feel empowered and to not feel like, we don't have options and we're victims or whatever might be going on. And I always look for quotes, for inspirational quotes my whole life. And I love finding people that kind of navigated a situation that I was like, I don't know how they managed to get through that one. And what did they do and how did they do it? So Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl has this wonderful quote, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And I often find in those moments when I'm feeling the most overwhelmed or anxious, it's because I don't feel like I have a choice. I feel disempowered. And I do find that when I stimulate my vagus nerve with the parasympathetic oil, that gives me that space. That gives me that moment of like, wait a minute, I do have choices. And it's so empowering. And I just want people to know you always have a choice and you always have space.
Agency. So beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. It means a lot to me that you took this time, and I'm really happy for the people that got to participate with us.
Thank you. It was a great conversation. I hope it was valuable for your listeners.
Where can people find you, Jodi?
They can find me at Vibrant Blue Oils. And if anything I said felt interesting, you can dive even deeper at boostthebrainbook.com/gift. You can download a free chapter on your vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system with better graphics to kind of illustrate the point.
And it's pretty easy for them to check out the parasympathetic blend, which I think is a great entry, so they can check that out too. Well, thanks again, and have a great day, and thanks for all the light you bring and all you do.
Thank you.